throughout history, humans discovered that sticking together helped keep them safe from dangers like wild animals and bad weather. They started living in big groups, building large villages to feed more and more people. As time passed, these villages grew into busy cities bustling with activity. To protect themselves, cities built huge walls around them. Inside, people could live their lives without worrying too much. Society kept getting better, becoming more organized and civilized. But not everyone settled down. Some folks preferred moving around, going from place to place instead of staying in one spot. In far-off Mongolia, many groups lived this way, hunting wild animals and taking care of goats and sheep for food. Because their animals needed fresh grass to eat all the time, these nomads didn't build permanent houses. Instead, they made camps that they could pack up and take with them in wooden wagons. This let whole groups travel together with their animals to find better places to live. Living like this wasn't easy. Families shared small spaces inside round huts called yurts, made from wood and covered in thick, warm material like felt or wool. Some big groups even took up lots of space on the land, setting up their huts all over the hills. The leaders of these groups were Khatkans, and they made decisions about politics and fighting. To travel long distances, the nomads trained special horses that were really tough and could run really fast, even though they were small. These horses were so important that a leader's wealth was measured by how many of them he owned. But life in Mongolia was tough, especially in winter when it got really cold. And it wasn't just the weather that made life hard. There were also bands of thieves who stole animals and attacked camps. Sometimes, different groups of nomads fought over land for their animals, and things could get really violent. Other times, outsiders, like the Tartars, would attack Mongolian camps, causing even more trouble. Life for the Mongols was tough, full of tough times and lots of unknowns. The mighty Chinese kingdoms saw them as nothing but wild troublemakers, always raiding caravans and little border towns, but never really a big threat. The Chinese rulers spent ages trying to keep the Mongol tribes fighting each other, paying them off with money or stuff to keep them busy squabbling. This way, the Chinese could stay in charge. The Jin dynasty, especially, made things hard for the Mongols. Their borders were always under threat from other tribes, so the Mongols seemed stuck in a rut, always playing second fiddle to stronger kingdoms. But in 1206, a guy named Temujin changed everything. He fought hard and won the title of Genghis Khan, which basically means the big boss Khan. Genghis Khan had big plans to bring all the tribes together. Anyone who didn't want to join him got the boot, plain and simple. With a big army behind him, Genghis Khan set his sights on the fancy Chinese cities. Back then, China wasn't one big country. It was split up into three big groups. The Tangut dynasty had the north, the Jin dynasty had the northeast, and the Song dynasty held the south. The Tanguts were first on the Mongol list. Their land was close to Mongolia, and not all their towns had walls around them. The Mongols didn't have fancy siege weapons or know how to build them, so breaking into walled cities was tough. But the Mongols had one thing on their side: patience. They camped out and waited, while the Chinese inside the cities couldn't go out to get food. The Mongols were pros at riding and hunting on the plains for centuries. That made them top-notch fighters on horseback. They had this special bow made with animal parts that could shoot arrows really far and really accurately. The Mongols had these small bows that were easy to handle, even when they were riding their horses super fast. When they got into fights, the Mongols made sure to stay far away from their enemies. They'd shoot lots and lots of arrows, raining down like a storm. They were really smart about fighting. The Mongols were experts at setting traps and sneaking up on their enemies. One trick they liked to use was to act like they were running away when they were attacked by big groups of soldiers. Then, when other guys got tired from chasing them, the Mongols would turn around and surprise them with their quick moves. The Mongols were so good at riding that they could control their horses with just their knees. leaving their hands free to fight with weapons. This way of fighting helped the Mongols beat armies that were bigger and had fancier gear. But if they had to get up close and fight, the Mongol warriors could be really fierce. The Mongol archers, known as Mongudai, started training when they were kids. They spent so much time on horseback that some of them ended up with leg problems. For the Mongols, it didn't matter how long it took. If they had to wait weeks or even months, they'd starve out cities until they gave up. They turned the city walls into traps, using them against the people inside. But waiting around didn't sit well with Genghis Khan. He'd get fed up and just destroy any city that wouldn't give in to him. Maybe because life was tough for them, or because they didn't think much of city folk, the Mongols didn't show any mercy to their enemies. They didn't bother taking prisoners. It was just more mouths to feed and more trouble. It's said that around 30 million people died during the Mongol invasions in China. Cities were raided and burned down, leaving destruction everywhere. The Mongols didn't just hurt people physically. They also used fear to mess with their minds. If one city fought back and got punished, the next city would probably give up without a fight, knowing what could happen. But the Mongols were smart too. They kept important people alive, like Chinese nobles and folks who knew how to do stuff like building things, making maps, fixing metal stuff, and cooking. They even got help from Chinese engineers to build big weapons for taking over cities faster. Even the mighty city of Beijing, with its tall 12-meter walls, couldn't hold out against the Mongols. Genghis Khan's victories brought more fighters to join his army. The Mongols took over a huge chunk of land with their camps. Some Chinese cities were left alone if they agreed to pay the Mongols every month. They paid with gold, silver, good wood, and fancy silk. The Mongols started picking up new tricks and stuff, like making really good weapons and clothes out of silk and shiny jewelry. They even put armor on their best horses, so they'd be protected in battle. By 1215, the Mongols had taken over lands that used to belong to the Tangut and Jin dynasties. The Song dynasty was the only one left, and they had a big army that kept the Mongols out. Under Genghis Khan, the Mongols got a lot of money and good land, and they started building a huge empire, one of the biggest ever. In 1218, the Mongols were in charge of the lands they'd conquered in China, and they were really tough rulers. The Chinese had learned the hard way not to mess with the steppe warriors. The Mongols didn't really care about fancy coins or gold. They figured out that trading stuff was a better way to make their kingdom rich. Genghis Khan sent people with lots of stolen coins to places like Korea, India, and Persia to make trade deals. But things went bad when Mongol messengers were killed in Persia. They were accused of spying, which made the Mongols really mad. Genghis Khan led a big army of 200,000 fighters to take on the Persian cities. The Persians had brave knights and strong armies, but even they couldn't beat the Mongols, who fought like wild animals. The Mongols smashed cities like Samarkand and Bukhara, leaving nothing behind, not even animals. Millions of people died during the Mongol attacks in Persia. By 1220, the Mongol Empire was gone, and everyone knew not to mess with the Mongols again. The Mongols figured out that having different kinds of soldiers in their army was a good idea. That's why they let lots of Muslim warriors join up. Their army was huge and had people from all over, like Mongols, Chinese, and Arabs. They all lived together in the camps, which helped them get to know each other better. This mix of folks had some good outcomes. It helped them build new connections and friendships. The Mongols were really open-minded about what other people believed in. They let all kinds of religions and rituals happen in their camps and cities. The Mongols themselves followed a religion called Tengriism. They believed in a powerful god named Tengri, who they thought lived up in the sky above everything else. Their religion also had some elements of shamanism and worshiping ancestors. Over time, They also picked up some ideas from Tibetan Buddhism. When the Mongols took over Persian lands, they got control of a big trade route called the Silk Road. This road was super important for trading between different countries, with caravans bringing goods from faraway places. The Mongols didn't tolerate thieves. They chased after anyone who tried to steal in their territory. Because of this, traveling along the Silk Road became safer for everyone. People started calling this time Pax Mongolica, which means Mongol peace. Controlling the Silk Road was a big deal for the Mongols. With that excuse, they headed to Europe, where they started taking over lands in Russia and Ukraine. It seemed like nothing could stop the Mongol armies. Their generals had the power to decide when to attack or retreat, and they were really good at what they did. The Mongols split their army and attacked lots of places at once, making it hard for their enemies to help each other out. But in 1227, their great leader Genghis Khan suddenly died. His death made the Mongols unsure about what to do next. Many leaders and generals thought they should be the new big boss, or Khan. Genghis Khan's third son, Algade, became the new leader. He had to keep growing the Mongol Empire. Genghis Khan's other sons and grandsons got to rule over different areas, called Khanates. Algade was a tough leader. Just like his dad, he finished taking over northern China and made Korea obey the Mongols. He even started a big war with the powerful Song dynasty in southern China. That fight lasted 40 years. Following their plan of attacking lots of places, the Mongols kept moving toward Europe. The Mongols had one of the best generals in history leading them, Subutai. He served under Genghis Khan and now under Algade Khan. Subutai came from humble beginnings, but his skill on the battlefield got him to be the top general of the Mongolian nation. Some even say he was friends with Genghis Khan himself. Subutai lived up to his reputation. With other Mongol generals, he invaded Russia. It was a brave move, considering how big Russia was and how tough its warriors were. But Subutai wasn't like other generals, and neither were his plans. He attacked Russia in the middle of winter, marching his troops through freezing temperatures. The Mongol warriors showed incredible strength, allowing them to keep going despite the cold. The Russians fought hard, but they couldn't stop the Mongol army. In 1240, they took and looted the great city of Kiev. After that, Poland, Hungary, and Romania fell too. Even the knights from Europe, who were used to fighting in the Crusades, couldn't beat the Mongol archers. Other European countries knew they were next and tried to make deals with the Mongol leaders to avoid being attacked. But then, in 1241, Algade Khan died because of drinking too much alcohol. Mongolian tradition said that all the leaders had to meet to choose a new leader. This stopped the Mongols from taking over the rest of Europe. The meeting happened in the Mongol Empire's capital, Karakorum, which was in Mongolia. Algade's death stirred up the ambitions of many nobles in Mongolian society. Over the years, there was a fierce competition among leaders vying for the title of Great Khan. This led to armed conflicts among the Mongols, signaling the first cracks in the once mighty Mongol Empire. Disagreements continued to simmer among the noble Mongols, further weakening the empire. Eventually, Kublai, one of Genghis Khan's grandchildren, defeated his brother's troops and claimed the title of supreme leader of the Mongolian nation. The empire was split into four major khanates. In 1271, Kublai Khan founded the Yuan dynasty, ruling over China and Korea. Genghis Khan's second son, Chagatai, established his empire in northern Afghanistan, known as the Chagatai Khanate. Batu Khan founded the Golden Horde Khanate, controlling vast territories in Russia and Hungary. The Il Khanate, commanded by Hulagu Khan, was centered in Persia. Kublai Khan successfully conquered the remaining Chinese territories, becoming the first foreign emperor to rule all of China. He was educated in the customs of the Chinese court from a young age, which made him well-versed in civilized life. However, many traditionalist Mongol leaders saw this as a weakness. Kublai Khan had a tough time ruling because there were lots of riots and secret plots against him. His way of running things didn't work well, and there were often revolts happening all over the empire. To make himself seem strong, Kublai decided to conquer more lands, and he set his sights on Japan. Compared to the big Mongol Empire, Japan seemed small and weak, so they thought it would be an easy win. They got a big fleet of Chinese boats ready and sailed toward Japan, but they didn't know that a sudden storm was coming. A powerful typhoon hit the sea, destroying lots of Mongol ships and killing thousands of soldiers. The Japanese called these strong winds kamikaze, meaning divine wind. They believed only gods could protect Japan from being taken over by the Mongols. In 1281, the Mongols tried again to attack Japan, but this time the Japanese navy was ready. They stopped the Mongols from getting to shore, and the few ships that did make it didn't have enough soldiers to beat the Japanese samurai. The Mongol Empire took a big hit from these failed attacks on Japan. Slowly, it started falling apart. Without strong leaders, revolts broke out, and new kingdoms started kicking the Mongols out of their old lands. The Mongol Empire officially ended in 1368. Most Mongols went back to being nomads in their homeland. Even today, there are people living simple lives in the Mongolian plains, but they'll always remember the bravery of their ancestors, who once covered the sun with their arrows and made the ground shake with the hooves of their horses.